Go right ahead.
Yes.
I feel bad. I should have brought you Starbucks.
I stopped and got you guys something too. I was like, hurry up and get there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for making the time, especially at this point in the evening. So we'd love just to hear from you. First, if you don't mind introducing yourself, how long you've been with the district, how long you've been in the principalship role. That could just kind of give us a foundation.
Okay. So I have actually, this is my 4th year with the district. I spent 16 years in Broward County to the south of us. This is my 3rd year as principal. So I had the unique experience of completing the principal pipeline in Broward County. And there were several opportunities for me to become a principal there. However, I was making a 52-mile drive each way, which up north is not that extraordinary, but down here in Florida, we're kind of spoiled, and that's a drive. So I didn't feel like I could dedicate my time to my family and my profession and have that drive on my shoulders. So I decided if I was going to make a change, it was the time to do it. And the assistant principal at my son's school was actually retiring. So I had inquired about coming to Palm Beach County, and they told me you have to go back to the classroom. And I said, well, that would be kind of crazy. I have 8 years. I'm in charge of all the professional development for assistant principals in my district, and they call that the AP Council. I said, no disrespect. I love being in the classroom, but that's not my career path right now. Mm-hmm. So I actually was very persistent and finally got someone to say, okay. The principal at his school knew me from being a parent, so she was also kind of on my side. So they made her open up the interviews to everyone in the district, and when she didn't find someone that she wanted, then they allowed her to open it up to outside candidates. So they brought me on, and I started right at the beginning of the school year, so I started in August. And then she got promoted to a director position here, actually in professional development, in May. But she was kind of doing both jobs prior to officially getting that. So I took over the principalship unofficially in May and officially in the start of the school year. For me, it was a big shift because I came from middle school. So I didn't have a whole lot of elementary experience behind me, and the literacy continuum is different. It's all different. So all of my 16 years prior had been in middle school. I also came from a different county, so we know the culture and the network was missing for me for that piece. And then I was a brand new principal. So I have a little bit of a different perspective than some people might.
Yeah.
But that being said, I love being in Palm Beach County. Love it.
Great. Thank you.
So I've been in the district for 19 years. I moved here from New York. I taught 3 years there, and then I moved here. My family relocated here. Within those 19 years, I took 2 leaves for personal reasons. But pretty much for 19 years I've been here. I've been a classroom teacher to a learning team facilitator to a reading coach, Title I specialist, assistant principal. This is my first year as a principal. All of my experience was elementary. Then I was encouraged to take an experience on the secondary level just so I could see the full spectrum, which was the best advice I could ever have received. Because I even think about when I'm disciplining the students, what does that look like long term? Because I get to see what that intensive reading student looks like who's taking SAI now in 3rd grade and is in intensive reading for 10 years of their little life, So it really gave me a great perspective in the last, 8 months that I've been a principal. And so I was at high school for 4 years. And so now being back at elementary, I'm back at home, but even still, there was just a lot of things that I didn't know that had changed in the last 4 years. And so I'm at a very complex elementary school. We have over 1,200 students. I have 1,268 students as of this morning. We're a low 300 school, low performing, so there's a lot of challenges in just that. A huge CTA heavy school where their voice is heard, whenever you're going to make a decision.
CTA.
So it's the Classroom Teacher Association. And so that's kind of been my experience in a nutshell.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it.
We're so lucky to get to talk to you.
Yeah.
Nice. And you're in your first year as well. So you're both in your first year.
I'm
third year
This is
and
my
first
first.
year. Okay. And so what do you love about the support you've gotten in your first years, and what do you wish that you had more of?
So I didn't get any official support. The network that I got support through was through the network that my former principal left me with. Basically, she said, these are your people. These are the ones you want to be around. I was unofficially assigned a mentor principal who was proximity close to me. She and I get along very well, and occasionally she would pick up the phone and say, do you need anything? But luckily I'm the type of person that will pick up the phone and say, hey, I need this, or I don't know this. At the time we're divided into regions. So our North Region secretary was my biggest go-to person. So I would pick up the phone sometimes 3 times a day and call her and say, Heidi, I don't know this, or I need to know this. And she has since moved back to a school site, but she was definitely what got me, a secretary is what got me through my first year as principal. I have had...
And got me through as an assistant principal, I will say that.
So
I'm no longer in the North area, but Heidi is incredible.
Yeah, she's amazing. So I will also say that I have had, in my 4 years with the district, 3 instructional superintendents, what you would call your principal supervisor. So I've had 3 in the 4 years that I've been here. And I swear it's not me. I'm not chasing them away. Yeah, exactly.
Let's think about that comment.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. And I can say, okay, is it everybody else or is it you?
Let's relax. Let's talk about that.
So I'm excited that my current one, I'm on my 2nd year with her. So.
So, being a low-performing school, the way the district has it set up is that your regional superintendent is your direct supervisor. So I don't have an instructional superintendent like she did. So my regional superintendent is hands down amazing. I can honestly tell you, I think I have gotten through this year because of his support. He's at my school at least twice a week. He's just been great, and he has never forgotten what it's like to be a principal. So, like, for instance, I had a student that passed away this year, and I was like, what do I do? Do I do a call out? Do I send a letter? Do I talk? Where's the crisis team? Like, I was just flustered and upset. And this had been a little boy, 4th grader, who had been at the school since pre-K and passed away from leukemia. And I will honestly tell you, wherever he was, he came to the school and he helped me do all that. So that's just like something that has nothing to do with academics that he completely came and supported me on. He paired me up with a principal, unofficial, you just kind of, this is who you can call, She's been spectacular. Every time she does something, she BCCs me on it so I can see it. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that now, So her, BCCing me on a lot of the emails or reports that she's turning in has been spectacular. So I had a different experience than you in the sense that I was surrounded by a lot of support. Not to mention being in the district, I already had a network of administrators that I could call, my former principal, other APs and things like that. I will say when I became an AP, all of my network was elementary, so I had nobody for secondary, and Heidi was the one that just saved me because my principal at the time was new to secondary. So she couldn't really guide me as much as she would have liked. So as an AP, I felt a little bit what you felt because I didn't have that network, but as a principal, that has not been my experience. I have been very fortunate because I am a low performing school. I always wonder if I was just a regular school. Like, I hate to say regular, that my school's not regular.
But I think you're right.
But yours is,
right. I'm a smaller school. I'm low on the complexity scale. I have 528 students right now. I'm not Title I. I have a very low ELL population. Yeah. So, my former instructional superintendent, even though I was brand new, I had a brand new AP that had never been an AP. I had a brand new principal secretary because the principal secretary retired.
Yeah, I had a new principal.
And I had a brand new treasurer.
Yeah.
So all of those things that can get you on the news, I have brand new.
Yeah.
But I saw him maybe once a month.
Yeah, no, so
And your hypothesis is it's because they chose to put resources in what's perceived to be the higher need area,
Yes.
which is an equity issue, which is hard for you still.
it is, and
Yeah.
and I feel comfortable even supporting that hypothesis, right?
Yes.
Because so I'm the opposite. I'm 98% Title I. I'm 75% ELL. I have 1,268 students, like I said. I'm 115% over capacity. So I have teachers doubled up in a room. I did have, so when I started there, the secretary and the treasurer and the front office, like receptionist,
Yeah.
whatever, all left. And so it was me and a whole new front office staff. So it was the blind leading the blind. I was just kind of like, what is it that you need? I don't know how to press the button. Where's the button? It's like still simple things as to how to even like manage the front office to buzz a parent in. Nobody knew because we were all new, right? But because I feel the way the district is set up is that your regional superintendents have your more high need school and then your instructional superintendents oversee. So like my regional superintendent works closely with 6 schools.
Mine has 19.
Correct. And so
So let me be clear. It's instructional superintendent and then regional superintendent.
Correct.
And your regional superintendent has 6 schools.
Yes.
well,
because-
he has the whole central. He has like the whole area.
The whole area. Okay.
But there's
Which is
6 schools that
50.
directly report to him and
him,
bypass the instructional
Got it.
soup.
Right, so he has
Okay, that's
54
about-
schools that he oversees, right? But within those 54 schools, he has instructional superintendents that break it up, right? So 19 in his cohort, another 19, another, whatever. But then there's the more high need schools that bypass that level, that layer, and just report to him. So I don't report, I report directly to him, and above him would then be like our superintendent.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot of people.
Gotcha. Whereas, who do you report to?
I report to the instructional superintendent that has 19 schools, and then she in turn would report to that regional superintendent.
Okay.
So now that's not to say if I needed something, I could reach
Then she
out to
could,
that
of
regional
course, right.
superintendent, but that's almost like jumping a step, right? So you
Right.
want to try to follow your,
protocol.
and luckily they're both,
Chain of command.
the people I have over me right now are currently both amazing.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of an upheaval with the gentleman before. A lot of people in the area did not, in his, they call it portfolio, in his portfolio did not appreciate his leadership style. So he was moved back to a principalship. So, and then she has a lot of coaches, which I have no coaches. And you have a single school culture, right?
I have a single school culture coordinator, but I have no coaches coaching right now because my teachers, I have, so you probably have a less of a turnover. Like right now, I have 11 vacancies for next year already, right? So I have like,
So your coaches are teaching.
my coaches are all in classrooms. So yes, I have coaches, but they don't coach. They're in classrooms teaching because I don't have, I have a very high turnover. So as much as everybody tries to comfort me, well, it's a first year, they always happen. And I'm like, but when you look historically, my school has anywhere between 18 to 25 new teachers every year.
Gotcha.
So
But you're going to change that.
I pray, I pray.
So now the focus of this conversation is, well, it's about the pipe. For me, it's about the pipeline from assistant principal to principal and through that transition, which is why it's really important to get your candid feedback around what the support looks like as the new principal and what it was like as an AP. So I want to know, what's consistent in the support that new principals get from their instructional superintendents, and in your case, regional? Like, do you get the sense that there's something that you and your colleagues are all experiencing, or do you think of it as being very differentiated?
Very differentiated depending on who your instructional superintendent is, I would say.
I agree.
Okay.
So there's not like any type of new principal cohort. There's not any type of expectation of like a log you keep or tasks you've completed, or.
I think they started to create one now towards the middle of the year because someone came to my campus and she was like, oh, and I was like, oh, what is this? This is something else I got to do. So I think, but it hasn't really been enforced and it didn't start till like January or February.
So do you think it should be this level of differentiation, or should it be
No,
more
there-
consistent?
no,
What
it
would
should
you
be
like to
consistent.
see?
Consistency,
Yeah.
and then again,
Okay.
I'll bounce back. Probably everything other than the leadership continuum, I like better in Palm Beach than I liked in the county to the south of us. And our superintendent, our chief academic officers, our deputies, everybody at the upper leadership is much more approachable. So when I was down in Broward County, I would never go up to Mr. Runcie and have a candid conversation, right? But I wouldn't have a problem going up to Keith Oswald, who we call Keith,
Right.
because he came up through our system,
Right.
and having that conversation with him. Even Dr. Fenoy, when he comes in, he jokes, you know, he's made comments
Very
before
approachable.
like, if I come in to visit your school, I don't expect to see the band, and if you're having a conversation with the parent, you better keep your ass in that chair and finish that conversation with the parent, right? They're real. They're principal people.
Right.
I felt like down in Broward, they were politicians, not educators. These people are educators.
Yeah.
So I feel like, and I think having you guys here is a testament to that. They feel like they know how important principals are and their school leaders are, and that there is a broken system here. So the
I agree.
system I came up through, and again, I can't speak for what Palm Beach is doing, because since I've been here, they haven't been doing anything. Now they're trying to start. So you had to be a teacher for 3 years, and then you could go into the LEAD program, which was teachers that were aspiring to be leaders. Doesn't mean all of them were going to become assistant principals, but most of them were. And then there were tasks that you had to complete as you went through that program, and there was a monthly network of meetings. So once you completed that program, then you could apply for the assistant principal pool. That's where you start building your network of people that you're going to move through this continuum with.
Yes.
That is your support right there. That is your person to call crying and say, this just happened, and know you're not going to be judged.
Right.
That's also where I had someone from facilities come in and say, when you become an AP, you better ask the head custodian where the gas shutoff is, because if they're not there and you need to turn off the gas, you want to know where it is.
That's a good tip.
Who thinks of that? Right? So, and obviously all of these binders meant something to me as I went through all of the phases of the program, because here I am 10 years later carting them from place to place.
Yeah.
Then once you became an assistant principal, you had a very formal mentorship that you met with that, they called it area director, but it would be the equivalent of an instructional superintendent. So my principal, my mentor, and my instructional superintendent would sit down once a month and review my progress and have action steps for me and feedback. And I was going through those tasks. So then you were called an intern assistant principal until you completed that program. So you had 1 year to complete that program, then you officially became an assistant principal. And it was a big deal. It was like on your ID and everything.
Did everyone complete the program?
Yes. If you
Okay.
didn't, you had to stay an extra year.
Okay, because I've heard of programs in other places where just by being in the seat and doing your time, at the end of the year, you became the whatever. But
You
here,
had to be checked out.
okay.
So then...
But that was in Broward, you're saying?
Yes,
Right.
this was in Broward. But, I mean, I think something like this would be very effective in Palm Beach. And then once you were an assistant principal, you had, once you were, for 3 years, then you could go into the intern principal program. So same thing, I had to interview with 3 different levels just to get into that intern principal program. And before you could actually interview for principal positions and get school principal on your Florida certificate, you had to complete that intern principal program, which originally was a 2-year program. The first year I interviewed for it, I went through the first 2 interviews. I'm like, damn, I'm knocking this out of the park. And I was. The 3rd interview I walked in, I let somebody rattle me, and I called my principal. I'm like, yeah, I didn't do well. He's like, you're kidding, you're lying. I'm like, no, I'm not. He thought I was joking. Sure enough, I didn't get in. So, but that's okay. You keep your head up, you learn, you move on.
Sure.
You know, that's when everybody watches you to see how you react. So the next year I got in, that 2-year program became a 1-year program. So all those people that had to sit through a year before me, we all graduated at the same time anyhow. But then you complete that program, and then they have the same thing for first-year principals. But I didn't go experience that
Sure.
because I became a principal here.
Great.
Sorry,
Got
that was
it.
a lot of information, not about Palm Beach.
So Palm Beach.
Yeah, exactly.
So similar, you had to have X amount of years of teaching. You had to have a master's degree in like ed leadership and, different requirements that you have to check off the boxes. And then you would get accepted if you met the deadlines and submitted everything. I think you had to submit like an essay. I don't really remember, to be quite honest. Then you got into the program. And then the program lasted 2 years long. You met once a month. Personally, I felt that a lot of the assignments were like busy work. They weren't really anything that I felt really was preparing me for what it was like to really be an assistant principal. Then I got in the AP pool when I I did all my assignments, turned everything in on time, and I think it was more, can you turn in stuff on time? Again, my perception. I enjoyed the meetings in the sense that I got to network, I got to meet a lot of people, and you kind of build that camaraderie, like we're in this together, we're going to get through it. And then at the end, you had to exit the program through an interview, which was targeted selection. Once you pass that, then you're in the AP pool, and then you can start applying and basically go through targeted selection again to then get a position at a school wherever you applied. So just because you're in the pool doesn't mean that you're guaranteed a job. It just means that you're allowed to apply.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so then, I did that. Then I was an assistant principal. You have to be an assistant principal for 3 years, similar to Broward, before you can apply for the principal program, Preparing New Principals program. And so you do that for another 2 years. And then during that process, I felt that one was a little bit more aligned with some of the things that you encounter on a day-to-day basis as a principal. But I really feel like what prepared me was my principal. Him calling me into his office, hey, I'm going to go through the budget, come sit down with me. Let me show you. Like, I really feel his training of it, what he taught me is what really prepared me to the point where he's always my number one person to call. Hey, how do I improve payroll? Like something so simple as that, right? That I didn't feel the program necessarily prepared you for. What they did prepare you for is the questions that you don't normally ask, like the legal questions, about hiring, the professional ethics and standards, like those kind of things. They had a lot of like principals come in and share their story and their experiences, which I thought was fantastic because it's always nice to hear other people's challenges as well as successes and how did that challenge become a success, like the journey, right? So I enjoyed those types of things. But what I didn't enjoy was the activities that they were requiring for us to do.
Like?
I don't know. I just felt like they weren't, for lack of a better word, like I felt like they were kind of dumb. Like I just kind of felt like, I'm trying to think of what would be an assignment. So they would say, pick a standard and talk about how you dealt with a difficult parent. Okay, well, what parent do you want me to pick? What kind of scenario? So I felt like it was more like they were preparing me for like that star format answer for an interview so I can like list my experiences versus giving me tips and training as to how to handle that difficult parent. I have to write about it, but you're not really coaching me as to how to address that.
So let me ask you this question. You said that the budget workshop that you did with your principal, which I'm imagining happened in your school, in your building, in your context.
Correct.
Could you have taken that same assignment out and done it with the principal group, with your school and your budget?
100%.
Would it have still been?
But that wasn't an assignment that was assigned through the program.
Got it. And I was just trying to get a sense
Yeah.
of, is that the type of thing that worked well because it was the
Correct.
person who's currently supervising
Yes.
you, or it could have been anybody meeting you through?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, it could have been anybody. It was just the experience, the exposure, right? So, for example, now my assistant principal is going through the principal program. And her assignments, like she has a checklist and it tells her, you have to meet with your principal and go through a budget. And, so now when I sit there with her, like in my mind, I'm thinking, damn, why didn't I have that?
Why didn't I get to do that?
So they have revamped it from when I went through the program. So that, like, I was very happy to see that with her. And she's actually having a very pleasant experience with the program now. So they have revamped it. But I will say that I kind of felt I would have liked for it to be more of a checklist of things that I have to do with my principal and have him or she
or
with a mentor, someone that's going to really give me those experiences, like going through a budget. How do you approve payroll? What are you looking at? Master schedule, what are you looking at when you're approving payroll? Am I just clicking select all, approve? Because that's kind of what I do most of the time. I don't really know what I'm looking for, and then until you get the nasty gram saying you haven't approved payroll. Really? I thought I was. So what was I approving?
503 outstanding payroll.
Yeah, so it's it's like little things like that you're just kind of like, but until you're on the list, you don't know you were doing it wrong. And those were all things that would have been great. How to manage that you have to do 200, I mean, I have 98 teachers on my campus. So 200 between informals and formals on your teachers that have been there, for more than 3 years. And then the ones who haven't, you have to do 4. How to manage that on your schedule, plus dealing with angry parents, monitoring academics. Like those are all things that...
And developing your APs.
And developing your APs and developing your teacher leaders, and making sure that the kids are being treated equitable and they're having access to everything. And just because they speak English, you're not throwing them on the computer. And how to have that conversation with a teacher to kind of build efficacy. Like all of those things, I feel, is what needs to be in a training or in a program, because those are things you just kind of learn on the fly, right?
Definitely, agree.
So that's the idea that you just said, like having that conversation with teachers about what does it mean to serve children equitably. So are people having that conversation? Is that a touchy topic? Is it what's going on with that conversation?
I think we have it in our principal leadership academies.
Correct.
So those are our monthly principal meetings that all principals from the district come and attend. So I think we do have a lot of those hard conversations in those meetings. And I mean, I can think of one meeting in particular, I don't know if it was this year or last year, where just people of different ethnicities stood up and talked about their experience and talked about how it felt to be in their shoes. And really, I mean, some tears were shed and people really learned to support each other. So I think we definitely, in that setting, have those hard conversations.
Are they like intentionally brought up? Like it's on the agenda, we are talking about X, Y, or
Yes. And actually, he left now. He was so awesome.
Oh, Ruiz.
Yes,
Eddie
Dr. Ruiz. He was
Yeah. amazing
amazing at that, and that was his department, and his
What's the
trainings.
department called?
It was equity and
ec-
access, equity,
something like that.
And he was incredible, and you knew that when he stood up and talked, you were going to take something away. And then also another thing that they had a practice of doing for a while was the upper leadership would share their leadership story, so how they got there. So you learned a lot of things about people, like some of our upper leadership becoming mothers when they were 15 years old. Right? You don't know. You see this strong, powerful woman and you just make assumptions, right? And then you learn about these challenges. Right. And then you hear Dr. Reese tell his story about how he spent more time with the custodians in the hallway in high school and teachers affected him to get him where he was. So those things that we did in Principal Leadership Academy were really impactful.
Okay. So those are your once a month meetings.
Yes.
Okay. And then you said Dr. Ruiz is not here,
No.
but his department still is? Or is there someone
They
else? Or no?
They restructured it.
Oh, okay.
Is the work still as effective as it was? Or did the restructure kind
He
of...
just left,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah,
it's
but,
kind of hard to say. You kind of
So he was,
don't feel the presence of.
he was the leader that was necessary for that to happen,
Yeah.
or the type of leader.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's sick.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask it. Is it easier, harder, or the same for men and women to rise through the ranks here, from assistant principal to principal?
Since I've only been a woman, I can really only speak about my own experiences, but I don't feel like there's a disparity. I feel like the opportunities do exist. And again, I will bounce back. And if you don't want me to bounce back to my former county, you can say so. I gave an interview that my principal had moved up and was the director at the time, the regional superintendent. So I gave this interview and walked out. And he said to me, "That's the best interview I've ever seen anyone give. We want a black male for that campus." And I said, "Okay."
And that was in your prior that you experienced
Yeah,
that.
I don't feel that here.
Yeah.
I was acting assistant principal in a school where I had been the teacher for 5 months. The principal that had left, or assistant principal hired they said we need a Hispanic male. A gentleman that was friends with the principal went down to the district office, and because his last name was Hispanic, changed his ethnicity. He didn't speak a word of Spanish. and he got the position. And that's when my mentor AP said to me, everyone is watching you. How do you respond to this? So I kept my head up and I trained that man. And before I went back into my classroom, I got the call and said, you've been given the assistant principal position at this school. And everything happened for a reason. And that was one of the best experiences for me as a person and as a leader. So I don't feel that here.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't feel that either. I feel like it's pretty equitable between gender and ethnicity. I haven't really, you do hear, sometimes, oh, so-and-so would be the best person for the job. My school is predominantly Hispanic. I'm Hispanic. I want to believe in my heart I didn't get the job because I'm Hispanic, I want to feel like I earned the position.
But at the same time, you can see where your community would want someone
Would
for those
respond
children
well
to look up
to
to
me,
and
right?
to respond well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Right. But I will say, I then take it as an advantage. Like I want to be a role model to the students that I serve. Like just because you come from an, I don't know, low socioeconomic or families that are immigrants or whatever the case may be, you can, be successful. You just got to work hard. It's just. I always tell the people on my campus every day, I'm like, our kids have to work 3 times as hard just to be average, not to even be above. So that means you have to work 3 times as hard because we can't ask them to work harder than us. And so that's just the message that I'm constantly saying to them. And some understand, some don't, but that's important to me that my kids see that.
So when you're leading as a person of color, as a white woman, and leading staffs that have a lot of different types of diversity present. I know as individuals, we might, through our own professional learning, reading experiences, feel called to address certain things or have different levels of comfort addressing certain things. Does your system support you in any way with having tools and skills to have those types of conversations?
Yes.
I feel, especially even at my school, I have a dual language program, so you have the teachers that don't speak 2 languages, feel like, the dual language program is taking over the school, I'm not going to have a job any longer, So I do have a lot of district staff that will come like on a professional development day and come and talk about, cultural diversity and, how just because a child is learning a second language doesn't mean that they're disabled, If anything, they're, you know what I'm saying, right? And so I think it's more like they support us as administrators in that shift. But I feel that sometimes you'll still have teachers who, he doesn't speak English, just put him on the computer.
Like just
and
using it as an excuse.
Just dismiss them. And so the district is really good about when you reach out to them to come and provide you, like there's a person, her name is Lisa Almashi, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to work with her, but she comes and she does this, amazing training. I've sat through it as a teacher, as an administrator, like she does different levels of it. And it's very eye-opening, the way she presents it. And they come and they support you with your school. So I've had to use them a couple of times because I'm trying to build some efficacy on my campus.
And some empathy.
And empathy and, and understand that everybody deserves to have the same rigorous expectations that, how they look or what their last name is shouldn't dictate, how you teach them, teach them based on their learning styles, not.
We also had that 2-day diversity training that we went to with our staff. We could bring like 2 or 3 people with us.
Yes.
And we attended. It was outsourced. I don't remember the
Yes,
company
I don't
that put
remember
it
the
on, but
company
it was a 2-day, and it was required for all principals, and then you could pick some of your teacher leaders to attend with you.
So the district does embrace it. We really look at the data also with our ELL populations, even the different demographics. So we do call a spade, and we talk about where our weaknesses are. Even at when you're looking at your referrals, what demographic, are black males getting more referrals than the Hispanic females and your ESC kids, so there really is always a lot of talk around that and how can we improve on that and how can we build on that. And that's another thing that could be implemented as part of your training for a new principal, how to
have those conversations and how to look at that data, because we do talk a lot about closing the achievement gap.
Correct.
You know, if you're
How
not
do you
with
do it?
somebody that's strong on data, you don't have that exposure or that experience. And then again, how do you do it? Because a lot of times it's the language, it's your paradigm, it's how you're asking questions. So maybe it's not their ability to learn, but it's your ability to deliver instruction. And that's what I had to get through to my teachers. It's not okay that a low-income white male tends to outperform a high-income black male on a standardized test. What is that telling you? Something is not right. Something is broken there.
Yeah.
Okay, this is informative for sure.
I don't know if this is what you want, but this is what it
I
is.
don't know what the other principals may have shared with you already.
No, that's why we're just collecting,
Yeah.
collecting a lot of data from a lot of people from
Yeah.
various who work in different parts of the county. So it's
Yeah, so if you were to be able to sit down and redesign the program, make sure that leaders were supported, equipped, ready to have these equitable conversations, ready to be as effective as possible the first year, what would you make sure is happening in that PNP program?
So time management.
Okay.
Like, how do I manage the nuts and bolts and still be an instructional leader in the building?
Operations and instruction,
Yeah,
right?
How do I balance those? And like,
The custodians, the cafeteria
yeah,
workers.
and you need that. You need the piece on that. You need to know about transportation. You need to know about facilities. You need to know about safety. But then I need to know how to set and manage my time so I can be that curriculum leader in the building. Because it's real easy to get sucked in to being a task manager as opposed to a curriculum leader. So.
I think, so you know curriculum, right? You know instruction. But what you don't know is how to handle the two cafeteria workers that are beating themselves up in the kitchen and you're concerned to just pulled out a knife, or the custodians that are chasing each other with like brooms and just doing all sorts of stuff. And you're just like,
kinds of things that happen. And
Yeah.
you lag time in the building.
correct. Yeah, seriously. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I have spent a lot of time this year just managing custodians, you know, like I wasn't prepared for that, you know, but it's part of my job and I get it, you know, I'm not complaining about it, but I felt ill
better
prepared.
right?
I was just kind of like, so you don't want to use that mop, and he's telling you you have to use that mop, and in your mind you're thinking, does it matter? But you don't want to sound insensitive, so you're like, well, can you explain to me a little bit more about the difference between the mops? And so you're trying, you know, or rodent issues, and just like all of these things that go on that you just don't realize as an AP, as a teacher, you know. Like I feel like I'm very well prepared for curriculum to lead that work. But what I wasn't prepared for was like the operations with, the bus driver who refuses to have her on the bus because she's rude and
Brought
disrespectful.
him to school. You better take him home.
Was there ever a survey that existed that asked you questions around what do you think you're really skilled at? What do you think your growth areas are? Like, this is what it means to be a principal.
Right.
Boom, 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 boom. You click through some things. I'm just imagining this. Like,
Yeah.
was there any sort of assessment done so that
I
you
don't
could
feel
get more
like there
perspective
was.
around
Yeah.
what you needed? Okay.
I don't feel like there was. You know, how to deal with the rude front office person who is always on the phone. You know, just like that non-instructional.
Or parents
Or
that
the-
come through your car loop and take pictures because there's not someone standing by a gate and they want you to show the picture at the faculty meeting.
Yes.
Like just those.
Or even the media.
Yeah.
Like that's another thing, like the media. Like every time, you know, there's something, they want a comment from you. So how's your school handling that? Shoot, I didn't even hear that happened. I've been so busy. Where did that happen? What school?
You're busy with the custodians or the
But you
Yeah.
don't want to be on camera saying that.
Well,
Right.
and when you
So it's
wake
like-
up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you say to your child, get dressed, the cameras are in front of school, we gotta go!
Yeah.
Because they're complaining about traffic, but you didn't know that a parent
didn't.
called Channel 5 News and that they were going to be staged outside of your school when you pulled up in
Yeah.
the
So it's
morning.
like little things like that. Like I think we're so concerned about academics. But I feel like all of us, like I think leaders, we know academics, right? What we don't know is how to balance instructional leadership, exactly how you said it, with like just the business aspect of running a school.
Yeah.
You know what? You're the last principals that we're speaking to. So I want to ask, this is a personal question, but it doesn't have to be taken personally. There's a lot of talk in the education world around the principalship and high divorce rates. And
How, what, I'm sorry?
divorce rates,
Oh.
and people are married, have a significant other, that sort of thing. Is there anything that caught you by surprise in terms of workload, in terms when you shifted from AP to principal, or did you feel like it was the same level and intensity?
For me, I feel like I always wanted to take on more as an AP. So even though I knew, like I know now the buck stops with me, I still held myself personally accountable for everything as an AP. So I almost felt like I was already acting as principal without the title. So, and I also think I do try to have that balance. So like my kids get out at 2. A lot of days I will leave at 4 and go pick up my son from school and just take all that stuff home. And while he's sitting at the table doing homework, I will sit at the table and bring my schoolwork home. For me, that works. For some people, they can't be out of their office and do that. So, but I did get divorced this year. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but and it's a thing where I just...
So coming from a high school and having midnight football games, not having that at an elementary level is golden.
You can pay me enough to do high school. Middle school, I'm good. You can pay me enough to do high school. I don't care if there's 5 APs.
I was APA, so I was there many hours, so I feel like I'm not working as long.
Okay.
But I will say, my sons are 22 and 20, right? And so I don't think with the amount of hours that I spend at work, because like I'm that person who's there till 6, 7. Like last night I left at 7:30 and I'm there at 7 in the morning. I don't think I would have been able to do it if my kids were little. I think that would have been really hard for me. My husband, when I do get home, he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want me to talk about work. If I'm on my phone or I'm on my laptop, he's like, really? You're coming home at 8 o'clock and you're still working? So I've been trying to do better with when I get home, like stay as late as I need to stay, finish what needs to be done for the day, because you're never finished with everything.
And leave it there.
And just leave it, and then just come home with my purse. Like, and just, now the weekends, I do tend to do work on the weekends, but I try not to, like if there's a Saturday tutorial, I'll try not to say, I'm coming in, you stay home. Like I try to, I don't want to say dump it on my APs, but kind of like been there, done that, you need to come on Saturday. I'll show up if I choose to, but I'm trying very hard to do better with that, but it does, I don't want to say cause a strain because he's very supportive, but it consumes your world because everybody's texting you, if the custodian's leaving and they can't get a hold of school police or they didn't call school police and the alarm goes off, just your phone's, you're on call all the time.
Yeah, you're never off.
You're never off.
You're never off.
So.
Yeah. We have just a few more minutes, and then we have another group. We're going to be speaking with some of the current folks who are in the PNP program. So maybe one of your APs.
I just finished it. But I will say that mine said that, in the end, it was more organized, but I guess there's been a lot of change in the leadership in that department, too.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of gaps and inconsistencies, is the feedback that I heard from my assistant principal.
Okay.
Dr. Ryapel is the one that's there, and she's a former principal, so I think she knows. And I really feel like under her leadership, there's been a significant shift. So I was excited to see that when my AP came with her little, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, what busy work do they have you do? And when she showed it to me, I was like, oh wow, so these are things we're going to do together. Awesome, I really embraced that because now I know. I have to take her under my wing and do to her like what my principal did with me.
So I have a question. So if she didn't come and show you that piece of paper, how would you have known what she needed to do?
So I think it's part of the program. Like you have to work with your current school principal, and I have to supervise those tasks. or provide her with the opportunity to do those tasks.
Okay.
So like it's testing, master board, budget, like there's a lot of different components on there. And so with that, I have to sign.
Okay.
So it's
And then if you were a less supportive principal, what might her experience look like? I mean, does it?
probably very negative.
It's like she possibly just couldn't get that work done
Correct.
if she wasn't in a
I
support
don't know what the
environment.
provisions are with regard to her having the option to say, let's say, go to another principal.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I want to assume that's an option, but it would make my heart hurt to hear that a principal wouldn't want
So
to.
I have a teacher
Yeah.
leader that came to my school last year, and she's finishing her master's, and that is part of the reason why she came to my school, because her principal did not support her in her learning, and she didn't feel like she had a good role model as a teacher leader.
Right.
So that was part of the reason why she came.
And I told my AP, listen, if there's anything I do opposite of what they're saying, then use it as a non-example. That's how you develop your own leadership style. As wonderful as I feel my previous principals have been and are, there are things that I'm like, oh, I want to do it that way, but it worked for her.
Right.
So it's an example for her, but it was a non-example for me, right? And so I encouraged her, don't ever feel like my feelings are going to get hurt. If you feel that the way I handle something, consider it a non-example for you, and then how would you do it different, Because I think that's just part of your journey to learn how to be a better leader.
Any last questions?
Yeah, I have any last questions.
All right. Thank you both.
Good information.
Yeah, you did. You really did. This is really helpful.
Well, clearly we're not shy.
No.
And we didn't know each other coming in.
No, I was.
Yeah,
I
she's in
just
the
sat down.
south and I'm in the north. Are you
Yeah.
central or
So I'm
south?
central.
Central. So we're not in the same region. So we see each other at the big meetings, but we don't have any small cohorts together. So and there's like all 200 and whatever of us
Yeah,
at
there's
the
a
big
whole
meetings.
bunch
So,
of us there.
Yeah.
Like a sea of heads is really.
but now she has someone else she can call.
Yes, likewise. Not that I can guide you much.
Well, she can find
Maybe
me.
you can find each other.
Yeah.
We never exchange numbers, principals in our district. 'Cause the directory, you just AP
Like, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, well, great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
If there's anything you guys
yeah.
need, just let us know.